For years, the bond between the United States and Israel was seen as unshakable, a cornerstone of foreign policy, a symbol of trust, loyalty, and shared values. Presidents came and went, prime ministers rose and fell, but the alliance stood firm. It was more than military aid or diplomatic support. It was a political marriage built on a narrative that framed both nations as beacons of democracy in dangerous neighborhoods. And for a long time, that story held. But now it's unraveling. Something has changed. You can feel it in the tone of press conferences, in the tension behind diplomatic smiles, in the carefully chosen words that used to flow so freely. What was once a quiet disagreement behind closed doors has turned into something more exposed, more raw. The kind of shift that doesn't happen overnight, but when it does, it's impossible to ignore. And today, that tension is boiling over. There's a sense of betrayal hanging in the air, not just politically, but personally. For Donald Trump, who once celebrated Netanyahu as a close friend and an unwavering ally, the relationship feels like it's crumbling in real time. There's anger, confusion, and more than anything, disbelief. Because Trump didn't just support Israel, he redefined that support. He moved the US embassy to Jerusalem, withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal, and backed Netanyahu on the global stage in ways few presidents ever have. He expected loyalty in return. Instead, he sees defiance. People close to the former president describe it like watching a trusted partner walk away mid-battle. And for many Americans, especially those who've always believed in the moral clarity of the US-Israel relationship, this moment feels disorienting. It challenges decades of assumptions. It forces hard questions about whether the alliance has evolved into something transactional, conditional, maybe even fragile. And yet, underneath all of this, beneath the fury, the strategy, the silence, there's something deeply human. Two leaders, once aligned in ambition and ideology, now caught in a storm of ego, war, and geopolitical fallout. It's not just a diplomatic rift, it's a personal fracture, and for anyone watching closely, it's clear this is not just a policy disagreement, it's a moment of reckoning between two nations that once prided themselves on never reaching one. Donald Trump has never been one to hide his emotions, especially when he feels slighted, and in this case, the slight runs deep. What began as quiet frustration over Netanyahu's actions has now erupted into open fury. It's not just political, it's personal. The man Trump once called a great friend is now, in his eyes, the architect of betrayal. And the anger isn't simmering beneath the surface anymore. It's boiling over, spilling into conversations with close aides, into statements laced with sharp jabs, and into the public consciousness like a slow-moving earthquake, finally cracking the ground beneath. Sources from within Trump's inner circles say his rage is palpable. This isn't about policy nuances or disagreements on strategy, it's about loyalty. Trump believes he stuck his neck out for Netanyahu when it counted most. He made bold moves once other presidents wouldn't touch, recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital, pulling out of the Iran deal, offering unwavering support in moments of international scrutiny. These weren't minor gestures. These were legacy-defining choices driven by a belief that Netanyahu had his back. And now, that same ally is making moves in Gaza and Syria without consultation, without warning, without even a gesture of alignment. To Trump, it feels like a slap in the face. It's not just that Netanyahu acted without informing Washington. It's how he did it, publicly, defiantly, as if the alliance no longer demanded coordination or respect. That's what stings. That's what turns frustration into fury. Trump, who sees relationships as transactional, expected at the very least a return on his investment. Instead, he sees chaos, headlines he doesn't control, and a narrative slipping from his grasp. And when Trump feels out of control, the reaction is never quiet. It's explosive. There's a human element here too, a mix of pride and disappointment. For a man who values loyalty above all else, being blindsided by someone he once praised feels more like betrayal from a friend than a political dispute. And that's why the fallout is so intense. This isn't a disagreement between two administrations. It's a public unraveling of a personal bond played out on a global stage. And in Trump's world, where everything is either loyalty or treason, there's no room left for subtlety. Netanyahu has crossed a line, and Trump is making sure the world knows it. The recent escalations in Gaza and Syria didn't happen in a vacuum. They were choices, deliberate, calculated, and explosive. And for Washington, especially those still aligned with Trump's vision of foreign policy, they felt like punches thrown in the dark. No coordination, no warning, just missiles in the night and political fallout by morning. These weren't just battlefield decisions, they were diplomatic tremors. And they shook something that was once thought to be solid: trust. Trump saw these moves as a direct insult, not just because of what was done, but how it was done. For a man who prizes control and dominance, being left out of the loop felt like humiliation. It wasn't just Netanyahu going rogue, it was Netanyahu rewriting the script that Trump believed he had authored. The one where America calls the shots, sets the pace, leads the alliance. But in Gaza, and again in Syria, Israel didn't wait for the cue. It acted on its own terms. And the optics couldn't be worse. Gaza's already a flashpoint, a place where every strike, every headline can shift public opinion. For Israel to ramp up operations there without so much as a heads up to its biggest backer, that's more than bold, it's defiant. Then came the operations in Syria, covert, risky, and deeply sensitive, especially given the complex web of players involved. It blindsided US intelligence officials and left Trump fuming. To him, it wasn't just a matter of bad timing. It was a breach of trust that undermined everything he thought he had secured with Netanyahu during his presidency. What cuts even deeper is the feeling of being used. Trump believes he gave Netanyahu political cover when no one else would. And now in return, he's watching that same ally pursue military aggression without a whisper of cooperation. It feels like betrayal, yes, but it also feels like loss. Loss of influence, loss of respect, loss of the upper hand in a region Trump worked hard to shape in his image. For the former president, this isn't just geopolitical chess, it's personal legacy, and when that legacy is challenged, especially by someone he once championed, the emotional fallout runs just as deep as the strategic one. Gaza and Syria weren't just strikes, they were lines crossed. And in Trump's mind, lines once crossed can't be easily redrawn. Benjamin Netanyahu has always been a survivor, a political tactician, a man who knows how to navigate chaos and come out untouched. But in recent months, his moves haven't just been about survival, they've been about dominance. His actions in Gaza and Syria weren't just military decisions, they were political messages. Not just to his enemies, but to his allies, and perhaps most notably to the United States. What's become increasingly clear is that Netanyahu is playing his own game, one that doesn't always include the US on the board. Even after years of close cooperation, after standing shoulder to shoulder with American presidents in photo ops and war rooms, he's now making moves that feel like a deliberate flex. He isn't waiting for permission, he isn't checking in, he's acting fast, bold, sometimes recklessly, and people in Washington are noticing. Trump in particular sees this not as strategic independence, but as betrayal. Because during Trump's presidency, Netanyahu was more than just an ally, he was a partner in reshaping the region. Trump moved mountains diplomatically to bolster Israel's position, often facing backlash at home and abroad. The Abraham Accords, the embassy relocation to Jerusalem, these were risky, controversial moves made on the assumption that Netanyahu would stand aligned, would honor the alliance in spirit and in action.